So can you tell me your name, please?
I am Nancy Smith Honeycutt and have been fortunate to be a part of Calvary for about 20 years and have continued to find it a great blessing in my life.
How'd you find your way here?
I was, at the time, back in the late 90s, was delivering baked goods and bread from Ingles Market to about 5 of the shelters here in Asheville on Sunday mornings. And I would, this was actually the last one on my route of that at that time. So when I would be finishing up at about 11 o'clock on Sunday. So of course would often see Reverend Bacon at that time, and she would always invite me to come in. And I wasn't really aware of Calvary, but was very much a seeker of a church at that time. So it was kind of interesting. My family got a big kick out of this, but I was often going to 2 or 3 different churches and sometimes 2 or 3 different services on Sunday morning. So it certainly was a convenient opportunity. And of course, having the invitation from her made it something I really wanted to follow up on.
So why'd you stay? What was it?
Oh, well, how could you not stay? It's a church that is extremely welcoming. Certainly the pastor is a wonderful and unique person and someone that draws you in immediately. And the congregation itself with the passing of the peace, it's one in which you warmly greet everyone within the congregation on that day, and that was something that was very appealing to me. Also, the fact that the shelter was present downstairs was a very powerful indicator to me of the response to the community that this church had a strong commitment to.
If you had to choose 3 words to describe Calvary, what would they be?
Let's see. I would say, certainly I would say light. The first thing that comes to me is the light from within the church, of the people, of the pastor, and then the light of this sanctuary, which is so remarkable. And these big yellow windows, which kind of transform the color of many things within, but there's a radiance about it that I think is very symbolic of the church itself. Oh, I've got 2 more now. Let's see. I think the warmth of the people and the warmth of the space, the air that is a part of it has always, to me, I love it when it's warm enough to have the windows open, because it's like the Holy Spirit to me coming in and out. And so that part is very powerful to me. And then I think the music and the love that is transformative and apparent as soon as you're here. Again, the space, it seems so alive to me. Seems very, very much alive, and I feel that way when I'm here. Oh no, don't do that. Please, no closer.
A little bit. Okay. And I'm good to go.
Okay.
Can you share some specific memories? When I just say memories from your time at Calvary, what comes to mind?
At the times that I first began coming, I was a part of a remarkable Bible study group. We met in the house next door, and Reverend Bacon and I were the youngest by far of this group, and it was a group of about 7 or 8 women most of whom were in their 80s or 70s. There was one other person at that, well, we weren't in our 60s then, but we were, this other younger person who was probably about 70. But these older women, when we would have a Bible study, and while I grew up in a family that always went to church, however, I'm not a person that's ever been a real biblical scholar by any means and hadn't really gone to Bible studies. But we would always have a lesson which was very powerful, just to hear these women speak to their experience and how this scripture impacted them. But of course, once the lesson itself was over with, we would be talking about, or they would be talking about other experiences, or just speaking their truth, and it was an unbelievable experience. So that was, I have to calm myself a minute. Also,
Can you tell me what, I mean, obviously it was very powerful for you. What was it about it that was so
well, I think that, excuse me, it was the insight that it gave me into the lives of these women that I had, I just had never experienced anything like this. Certainly, and I'm thinking back, this is going back quite a while, but it was just so exciting to hear of things that that their experiences as African American women of age who are going back sometime and to speak of their experiences, and they were talking among themselves and just relating as people talk, and hearing them, having the privilege of listening to that was just amazing to me. So it was, that went on for a few years, and was, there actually was another white woman of that group that had been a part of the church for a while, and she too also was speaking of her history and her, just her journey in life. But I think hearing a lot of the history that these African American women had experienced, and they weren't making a point of saying these things, they were just speaking of their common history, and it was bringing to light things that I had been unaware of prior to that, I guess. But I remember one particular story that still just today, one of the women had been a student, and probably more than one actually, I think more than one had been a student at the school for girls that was started by the Methodist deaconesses, the Allen School, which is close by. And they, one of the funny stories she told, this was a wonderful school that was created for African American girls by the Northern Methodist Church, and they came and made the school. And it was an excellent school. But one of the, aside from the other things related to the school, this woman told me about how she and another student used to run from one end of the tunnel to the other and then back. They would race, they'd have a race going back and forth in the tunnel. So that was always just kind of an amusing thing. When I go through the tunnel, I imagine Louise Long as a 15-year-old running back and forth. So that kind of poignancy is the kind of thing, aside from the spiritual and the sacred. Well, it was all spiritual and sacred, but it was just something very special to me to have this intimate time with that group of women. So one of the things I hope to see again as our church evolves is to offer opportunities such as that for groups of women of all ages, but to have that some kind of experience with those that have lived long lives, to share that.
Okay.
God.
I'm good to go.
Okay. So, are there any other memories? you
Ah.
share?
Well, the other thing that struck me right away was the sound, the acoustics in this building. And I love music, and one of the things that when I began coming, the the musician who was playing the piano was an excellent musician, but I noticed during the service that he would often fall asleep, and I was thinking, well, that's not that unusual, except in this church it was pretty unusual because Pat's such a powerful presence in the church itself. So, but later I learned that he was a jazz pianist that played at a bar until the wee hours of the morning, and so that kind of gave me a better understanding of about that. But even when our congregation is small in number, the music just fills the air. And again, I love the fact that when the windows are open, the music flows out into the community around us, and that's a wonderful part of it as well. And I think just there's real energy in the church. That was one of the first things I noticed also when I came in to the congregation, because I'd been coming in and out of the downstairs and driving around, and I felt a real powerful sense on the grounds here. I couldn't really identify it, but I just felt I felt a real sacred feeling. And then likewise when I would come inside, and I had never seen the sanctuary before, but it was nothing. I don't know why I seeing the windows from the outside, but still I was struck by the volume of it, and also just the warmth of the people within. Very welcoming, a very easy place to come into.
Now, how long have you lived in Nashville?
I've lived here about a little over 30 years.
So can you talk about your sense of this, this space and place, meaning not only the church itself, but the community that it's part of, in relation to larger Asheville, both kind of over time? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I think it is. It's so... Okay.
Is that downstairs?
I'm sure that's somebody trying to get ready for the
Okay. Rolling.
Okay. In terms of the community, the space we have here in the community, I am aware of the pivotal location and the pivotal presence of this church over the years. And I think in more recent years, as our numbers have diminished in some ways, I mean, this was prior even to my coming, and I think there has been changes in the neighborhood that in some ways a lot of it has become transitioned, in that others have recognized that it's an affordable place to buy in, and that has affected the nature of the community somewhat. But I think with that, hopefully there can be some positive growth, as well as, that I think that's a fear that we have as well, that there's a lot of loss of the community, the historical community that has always been here, and the fact that that Stevens Lee is right next door down there, and I have noticed this is for many years. I used to, in coming here and driving through, I used to be aware of particularly men of a certain age, a little older men, but I would often see them walking on the streets, and it was as if they were walking through the streets of their youth or of a younger time. And I know I've heard in talking with people who are living as part of the homeless community here, have said, you know, my parents or my grandparents always had a home there in the East End, and now that's all gone, and I'm here in this situation. So I think there have been some changes in that way, but I think there's also a real depth of identity with a lot of people who have lived here a long time, or who lived here at one time and perhaps don't live here now, but continue to see it as a real part of their home. And I know there's quite an allegiance to the alum of Stevens Lee to remember that location as their high school and all that went into that. But you know, you still see in obituaries now the class of whatever at Stevens Lee is certainly a very proud and very connected part of the community that it's always served. And I think that Calvary also had a strong presence in that, in the same way.
I want to talk about the actual space of the church.
Mm-hmm.
What's your favorite space in here and why? In the whole church building and larger property, what's your favorite space?
Well, I love the sanctuary itself, as I've said, because of the acoustics and because of the feelings that I have when I'm here. I also love the front porch. The porch has, it's something almost surreal about it in that there's a lot of trees immediately, but then City Hall is right there in a very dramatic way. So that's kind of interesting. The other aspect that is also so close by and so much a subtle reminder of a real devastating problem in our country is that the jail is right there as well. and while I've been in attendance here, they've built a bigger jail, and then they've expanded the one that's there. So, and the whole idea of how, as we know, the social injustice of our court system and our jails and all of that. So that's very much of a reminder to me of that in the midst of the beauty of the setting that we have here. We also have a beautiful view of the mountains and other parts of downtown. So it's quite an amazing place to look out from, but also to be enveloped and surrounded by. And again, as we have found out, that there really is quite a historical part of an important part of the community that has been right here on this hill, going back to the health of the sanatorium and also the school and the other work of the church that has been here has been, and it has just, it is on a hill, so you can look around and see the houses, you can see other churches, so it seems like a pretty significant location, I guess.
Talk to me about the basement.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that has been, it's still, it's so easy for me to see it as it was for the shelter, and even though I would just come into the front of it, of course, but I would see people who were here, and there would be people outside as well. So I got to have a bit of a relationship with those folks and with the staff people that were here. But it was always, I was usually here, of course, late enough in the morning that they were finishing with breakfast and preparing lunch, but it was always there was it seemed like a very calm and serene place. And one of the things too that was notable to me was that of course people didn't have to leave every day like they so often have to. So it felt much more stable in a way, in that way, and the people seemed very much more relaxed than when they have to get up and leave and come back and be on the street or whatever. And they could, of course, leave if they wanted to. I mean, but they also had the freedom to stay here, and that seemed to be very important to them, something they appreciated a lot. And the fact that it's right here in the heart of the city, and yet it's surrounded by trees, and it has a peacefulness that is certainly, I think, palpable.
Talk to me about your sense of race dynamics in Nashville.
I think that I've always been surprised at, how separate the races often are. I mean, just given the overall liberal or the feeling of progressiveness of Asheville. And yet I think that there's, certainly in the school system, it was always very apparent to me with my children coming through the public schools. One thing that was very apparent was when there's always been tremendous fear of the middle school. The middle school is like, I don't know. I mean, I was always surprised at the intensity of that. I did not experience that. I was not fearful of the middle school, but a lot of certainly white citizens would they would go to elementary school in the public system, and then they would take their students out for the middle school, and then send them back to Asheville High School, and or not, sometimes not, and go other places. But the middle school was just like considered, a place of great fear, and it seemed to me to be based on the dynamics because the student population or the percentages were much more equal than they were in other parts of the city and in other settings, which I found I was very glad to see that myself, but that was not the feeling that everyone had. So I think we certainly are now recognizing, as is the rest of the country, identifying, acknowledging something that has long been pervasive in our country between African Americans and the police, and I think that we see that here as well. It's not as obvious, or to me, but of course it wouldn't be to me necessarily. But it's certainly noticeable. It doesn't seem to be as obvious as it has been in some places. But then we too have had very, very serious and tragic examples of how the police system does not seem to be equal by any means, and certainly the judicial system does not. I mean, the lack of representation, obviously people have some representation, but it does not seem to be adequate or equal. So that's something that I see that our community certainly needs to work on.
What are your hopes and dreams for this church?
Well, I think to see, and some of the things that we are now talking about are very exciting to me, in that as long as I've been here for 20 years, we have been aware of our numbers becoming smaller, and of course, wanting to have more numbers because we feel like it's it's a beneficial and wonderful place to be, but also wondering in having that as something that we've been considering for a long time. We've had a lot of opportunities to look at why it is that it's changing and all of that, and had looking at other opportunities. But I do remember one of the things that has come up for our whole congregation to talk about is the changing of church in our society as at large, throughout, beyond Asheville and throughout the country, and how this is we're not unique, that many churches, traditional churches, are becoming smaller in number. And how is it that we can better reach the community in a way that, and benefit by having community be a part of us, that how is it that will evolve over time for Calvary, but also for the larger church. And the concept of looking at something that may originally seem totally different, but coming in to partner with a church and in a way that people are relating to another entity. In this case, it's a wonderful organization that is looking at culture and the arts, and from a much larger perspective, from a global perspective, and music and the traditions of culture. And so it's a very exciting concept to me, and it kind of fills in those question marks that we were always having as to, but what does that mean? What is it? The church will have to be flexible and move in different ways, but it's hard to vision that until it comes to you. So that's what is very exciting to me about the opportunity that seems to be presenting itself.
Well, I'm going to name the 5, actually 6, because I can talk about 7, movement and place as well, but what we traditionally think of our senses. Mm-hmm. And what I'm going to, after I name each one, I'd like you to just say the first thing that comes to your mind in relation to Calvary. Okay, just whatever pops first in your mind. So, smell.
I smell the outdoors and the feelings of, just the wind coming through here and all the different smells that come with that.
How about sound?
Certainly think of the music, but also the talking of people and the voices, and certainly Pat's voice and all of that, but also the voices of all of the people. Taste. Now let's see, what is that? I don't know, this seems kind of funny, but what I think of is water. I think of the living waters somehow, and so that, and I guess too, I think, even though this is an actual taste, but it still is what I think of. So that often when we have baptism, I'm able to pour the water. So that's a powerful thing. Sight? I think of color. Just rich, beautiful color. And for touch, I think of the hugging, the passing of the peace. To me, is and the literalness of that, that it is the passing of the peace.
About movement.
I think again there the movement that I think the air brings, the fresh air and the air, as I said earlier. I mean, it seems so much like the presence of the Holy Spirit to me. And with it, there's gentle movement, but I also feel like it has a more powerful movement that it brings within each of us.
About place.
Place. I think of safe refuge, That's just a very warm, embracing, comfortable spot.
About feeling, affect.
Oh, you can, I think you can see that. A very deep, profound feeling of love.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very powerful. So, a witness to your life in and love
Well,
of
God.
this place.
I sure didn't know it was going to be like that.
Never would have agreed to do it.
I really, and it's interesting to how powerful it is.
It is. It's a
So,
powerful community.
when I knew I never should have started off with the
Just let me know when you're ready.
I surely will.
Now look, we don't have as long as we did for Nancy's. Just ask me 2 or 3 questions and let's go home.
We'll see.
Nice glasses, Denise.
Thank you. Where's with this large truck?
It's probably somebody, they're going to taking a parking space back there.
Okay. Well, you were just saying about Asheville. Tell me about Asheville.
Tell you what, I got done with seminary and
Okay. Can you fix the shirt a little bit? There we go. Good.
hello. Fine. This is Amanda who was with us the last time. Amanda who said she'd never been in a sanctuary before. Is this it?
Oh, you came in.
We all fell in love with Amanda. I tell you, Amanda, when we had dinner the next night, we talked about you
Oh,
for
we
most of
sure
the dinner.
did. And look, I told you that sermon that I preached touched a lot of
Oh,
hearts.
really?
Oh my
You
goodness.
what you said.
Oh, I
Jay,
surely would. I
Jay,
surely
what
would.
we were talking about. Remember Jay? Hey, he was one of them.
Yeah, Jamon? You
No,
talking
it was
about? Oh no,
not-
Jay.
Jamon
the guy with the
interviewed you,
glasses,
but Jay was
right?
there, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
Good to see you.
And I absolutely love the Marvel Comics. Very nice representative. Who you got on this, Thor?
Such a dork.
Oh yeah, that's all right. Yeah, we're dorks together.
I just
We're
want
dorks
to point
together.
out, though, I did this before it got popular again.
You're a trendsetter.
Sure, everybody says that.
I used to do
We-
ombre hair like 2008. I'm
We
just saying.
have no.
What kind of hair?
Ombre,
have
bright
no-
red.
About me.
I love that. I love that.
So, why do you love Asheville?
It's a special place. It's a place that calls to me. There's something about being in this valley and looking up at these old hills, and the sky is unlike any other place here in Asheville. It's warm. It has its own holiness, its own specialness. I feel at home here. And I felt at home here almost immediately. I'm remember when I first came to Asheville and I thought, what am I going to do here? I'd come out of Atlanta and I settled in, and 2 or 3 months after I was here, there was a conference in Texas, and I went, and it was a pretty dull conference, and I heard myself say, I want to go home. And it wasn't back to Atlanta, it was here to Asheville, and it's been home, and it will be home. It's a good home.
What do you love about Calvary?
What don't I?
Are you okay? You picking up something?
Well, hold on 1 second. Okay. Yeah, no. I was gonna suggest we continue on. I was just gonna say, in the event that we do hear later, we hear a little bit, because we know we got her again, then we can.
I ain't said nothing about
I
again.
heard the decision, I believe, was made
You
for
don't realize
you,
that you signed on.
but you know what you signed up for. Okay, go ahead. We'll wait for that.
So what do you love about Calvary?
What don't I love about Calvary? There's an air here, a flavor here. The Holy Spirit lives here. Even on a bad day, okay? It's a keeper. It dwells here. And I come in here from time to time, and I sit in these old pews, and I walk and pray, and sometimes I'll come and read the Word here. I just want to be here sometimes, and it has a flavor all of its own, and I wouldn't take anything for my time here these 27 years. And there have been high times and low times and ordinary times, but this has been the place that God has called me to. And I'm so sure about that until I will not be moved from that, okay? Okay? I commune sometimes with the folks who used to be here. If I'm quiet, the folks who came to the sanatorium walk through here. Miss Daly walks through here. Miss Wynn walks through here. I hear them say, go ahead, you can make it. See, I told you so. It's going to be all right. Not that there won't be hard times along the way. We've had our share of those. But then when it's good, when the spirit is high, you hear it in the singing, you see it on the faces of the people. Sometimes the few children, they'll run around here and you look at them and it warms the cockles of your heart. We've had just some very incredible experiences. Once, a long time ago, there was a man who was mentally challenged, and we had communion, and all of a sudden he stands up and he prays the most incredible prayer. I mean, it was so unexpected, and it just filled this building, and it's full all the time in a very good way, in a nourishing way. It'll hold you if you let it. Stop laughing at me, Denise.
I'll laugh with you, I'll never laugh at you.
Make sure you look at her. There is no camera. There is no light.
He does not exist, it's all about me.
And I know you like to glance over here and see all this, but there is nothing here.
Oh.
See this? You see this? No, you don't, because it's not there.
All right.
Okay? But you're
Tell
doing
me
great.
about
You're
the
doing great.
basement.
Oh, the basement. I know that when other people walk through the basement, they see disrepair, they see the needs of that basement. But again, you have to listen to the basement. The basement talks to you. The basement has a message. The basement undergirds the building. Doggone it, come on. Come on. It's sitting on the basement. The basement is rich. The basement is full. The basement holds spirits of ages. You know, I can't even begin to tell you the value of that old basement. And the fact that we'll begin to work on it and bring it back to life, another kind of life, a whole kind of life, it's just incredible. I'm waiting for it. I got to be here to witness that. I go when some certain things happen here. I've been the caretaker here for a long time now. And I have, probably taken it too seriously, and then I haven't, because that's just the way I am. It has been an incredible place and continues to be, but there's yet more to come. There's a new life. There are different rungs along the way, and the old song says we're climbing higher and higher, and that's what we're doing here. That's what it's all about. The spirit is high. It's moving in a way that it hasn't moved in. It's always been there, but now it's alive in a very, very incredible kind of awesome kind of way.
Okay. What was that?
The keys that fell out of my hand.
Okay, good. Let me take those keys.
I'll leave them on the floor. Don't worry. Don't worry. I won't choose to pick them up.
What else you got in your hand? What's that? Give me that. Thank you. All right, there we go. All right,
And
did that
remember,
help?
don't
Did that
look
help
at
to
him.
have it?
I know, I want to look at him too.
I,
Don't.
I did. Part of that was my fault because I was getting into what she was saying.
And she could
so
feel
I had to turn around. Okay, I'm looking at this.
I was sitting here going, and you just totally ignored me and stared at him. I see, I understand, I said it's
No.
not all about me, but, look at me.
I got your butt.
Okay, go ahead.
You were talking about the people who you walk around this church and hear who give you guidance. Tell me about some of those people.
Oh, their voice is strong. This place was a healing place. This place was here when no other place would hold them. People came from far and near all across this country, and they found a place that cared for them. They found a place that offered them refuge. They found a place that nurtured them and helped to strengthen them day by day by day. And again, they undergird this place. You know that there's reading or some kind of old saying that says when I couldn't feel myself walking, that God carried us. These are the angels that God has sent to carry us. And I know most people don't hear them, but I don't care what most people think. I ain't most people, and they don't talk to everybody either. You have to be on a certain plane to hear them talk to you. I'm telling you. And when Miss Wynn comes through and she said, "Oh, child, you're just going through a season. It's going to be all right. You just hang in there." And or when I hear Miss Daly said, I'm praying, and I'm going to hold you up. I'm going to hold you up." And they do. They do all the time. When I walk through here sometimes in the wintertime and I'm saying, God, watch the plumbing. Don't let the pipes freeze. Or, God, let that old furnace keep going. And I hear Miss Davis say, it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. You're going to make it over. And we do. It is amazing. We look back and see what we come through. The God, God is so incredible. I was preaching about Paul the other day. And Paul, I mean, he was this incredible man, and he writes to the Philippian church. And the thing I got out of the passage from Sunday was that no matter what, I mean, we just have a part of the vision, but as we go along, the vision gets wider and wider and grander, and it's if we just follow the leadings of the Spirit. We've been here for a while looking for that peace or that partnership that would come and take us to that new place. And other things have come along, but here, this peace that has come most recently, it seems, and I think it's from God. I feel that it will come together in a way that God wants it to come together. Anyway, I'm blowing my stuff right now.
Tell me a little bit about the early history of this place. You keep telling us these people are undergirding. Who are these people? What was
Who are
this
these
place?
people?
What was this
There was a
place?
wonderful man named Dusenberry who came from the north to see if there was a place for a Presbyterian church here. And he went back and told them there is a place. And Dusenberry worked day in and day out. In fact, he died young to bring about this church. And then other people began to gather, come into the labors, and one thing led to another. And this church came together and has given and continues to give so much to this Asheville community. Along the way, there was the Dusenberry School. The Dusenberry School lasted for almost 25, 30 years, I forget now, but it was 10 cents a week or 40 cents a month to go to the Dusenberry School. There was a tiny tot nursery. Many African Americans in this community speak about the times that they had in that basement. And they talk about a wonderful woman named Della Eddington, and she stood with her hands on her hip with an expression on her face that said, "I love you, but you will do this and this and this in this house." And along came Hospitality House, a shelter for homeless men and women that went on for 20 plus years. And it was built on the order of Dorothy Day, where it was love, it was respect, it was a kindness, it was a care for people. And so that undergirds this church as well. That NA group out there, where there are 70, 80, sometimes 100 people, they undergird this church. And I can't even begin to call all the names who just march through these corridors and who've lent themselves to this place. There are ministers, incredible ministers along the way. Dr. Eddington, who spent almost 30 years here. Along comes a man named Will Neville, and he gives himself. He stands in the gap and holds it together when things were difficult, when things were challenging. And then along the way, they call this woman who comes out of Atlanta, Georgia, and they give her this opportunity to stand in this pulpit. It's just been, I say been, I mean it is. Oh, we're a little rusty here. We got to pull back some scales. We've been on the road for a long time, but we're wintertime soldiers around here too. That's all I know how to be, is to be in the trenches. But I wouldn't take nothing from a journey, okay? I just want to tell you that, even on the worst day, because everything has its road work. We're going to anchor by and by. We're weathering the storm. It won't be long. We'll anchor. It's here. It's here. And whatever happens, we keep our hands in the hands of the man. That's what we do. That's what we do. And that makes all the difference in the world. And what I see ain't necessarily so. It's beyond what I can see. And I rather like that, you know. I do. I'm dependent on that. And more so now than ever before. Am I looking at you, Denise?
You are. You're doing a beautiful
Take
job.
a breath. You're good.
You're
Good.
fab.
I waited a long time.
We're
It
gonna
was
get
worth it.
We're gonna get hours.
Come, we ready to go?
No, I got a couple more.
Just two more.
What was here before it was a church?
Excuse me?
What was here before it was a church? And if you can start with before it was a church.
Oh, before there was a church, there was a sanatorium here. And we don't have a whole lot of information about it, but what I have is this picture, this two-story building, and it speaks about a building with verandas and inside toilets. Can you get a load of that? Verandas and inside toilets. But it has the serenity about it. And again, I can see it. I can feel. In fact, I walk into the building sometimes and I peer into the rooms. I've seen the faces. I've seen the nurses who care day in and day out. I've seen the doctor who comes through. I've seen the folks sitting outside taking in this wonderful sunlight and breathing in this wonderful air. And I've seen them get well enough to walk on and walk beyond. But they come back to visit. They come back and give thanks. They come back and give shouts of joy. And before that, I don't know what was here, but There are all these wonderful things that are around us too. There's Stevens Lee School across the way. Can't you just see it? Kids going for miles around, coming to good old Stevens Lee. They called it the castle on the hill, and across the way was the Allen School. And then we're surrounded by these other wonderful churches, and we're brothers and sisters around here. We feed into each other. We got a cousin who goes over there and a sister who goes over there, but we all get together sometimes, and we know that we are kin. And for 5 years, we met with Berry Temple United Methodist Church. They helped us, and we helped them. And finally, they're able to go back. They've got a new minister. And this past Sunday, 8 of them just out of the blue show up for worship. They've already worshiped from 9 to 10:30, had communion, but they come back and sit here, and we have the best time. We will be forever joined at the hip. There will be nothing that separates us, you know? And I think that's what it's about too, isn't it? Isn't it? Isn't it?
Who came to the sanitarium? Who was it for?
African American men, I think predominantly men who had TB. There was no other place in the country to go. Can't you just see them arriving in trains and buses? Can't you see them weary carrying all their baggage, coming to this place? Can't you see people come driving here in those old cars and dropping them off and saying, you know, I've got to go, but this is the place that will take care of you, and then waiting to hear from them and to hear about their progress and checking in and just knowing that it was all right to be here. I think you know it was all right when you drove up here and you had a look, see it, or you could feel it more than you could see it. You knew it was all right to be here. Just like I know it's all right to be here. I've had some opportunities to go other places as I look back. And I entertained an opportunity once, and then I looked about this place and I thought, I ain't going nowhere. I'm staying right here on this rock. I know that it's not elaborate in any way. I have a friend who went on and she got 500 members. But I got 25, 30. I know everybody's name. I know where they sit. I can look at their faces and tell she's feeling all right today, or something is a little awry here today. I know every child's name. I know where they come from. And I've been to all of their homes. And I think that makes a difference. I really do. I know how I feel about it. And I get some decent feedback from time to time too. And I think God has been with me, and God has been with us. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't take nothing for this journey, I'm telling you. And I'm grateful for my background, for my raising, for old Job Chapel AME Church in Bolingbrook, Georgia. I go there. And I'm older now, so people who knew my family they're not all there anymore. But I'd go there and people would pinch my cheek and kiss me and hug me. You remember Rouge, you know, and they'd get all that old red stuff on my face. I'd be wiping off. But they said, that's Anna Lou's daughter. That's Amanda's granddaughter. And I sit in the pulpit there, and they're very strict about who sits in the pulpit, but I sit there, and an old lady said to me last Sunday, a couple of Sundays ago, you got to preach him before I'm gone. She said, I'm going to get him to let you preach. And I thought, if I do or if I don't, it's all right. And in that cemetery are my grandparents, my aunts and uncles. They're people whose names I know. I didn't get to meet them, but that's home too. That's to go back to Yamacraw to me. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful. I'm grateful. I'm not looking at you.
Okay.
Yes, you
No.
are.
What is it to me?
I don't think you want to put your name in for this one. Okay, what's your favorite name?
My favorite memory. Looking out from the pulpit at all the faces, drinking them in. I have memories of weddings. I have memories of baptisms, communions, funerals. I have memories of people lingering after church for more conversation. I have memories of just coming in here, sitting, of looking up at the window there. All kinds of memories, Denise. I got a boatload of memories. I have memories of people singing and even dancing in this place. I have lots of memories. If that's the hard questions, we're doing good.
Let's do the senses. First thing that comes to your mind when I say sense about Calvary. First thing about Calvary that comes to your mind. Smell.
Communion bread baking in the basement. Shelter guests are baking it, getting ready. And the flavors are just floating, the smell is floating through this church. Yeah. Or flowers. People bring the flowers from the garden and put them on the altar. And they just are so fragrant, it just billows through the church. I also remember Miss Wynn's perfume, too. She was very, every day, every Sunday had to wear her perfume. I used to know the name of it, but I smell it sometimes when I look at where she used to sit.
Sound.
Music. I like to sing songs without music sometimes. I'll pull up one of those sometimes so that I can hear all the voices. Birds flying over as we're having worship sometimes. I also hear a lawnmower from time to time for people cutting their grass on Sunday morning. I hear silence sometimes too. Don't ask me how I do. It's the taste of the communion wine. Or it's the chicken pot pie that Miss Moore brings to the family night supper. It's homemade fudge that Vivian Ridley brings. It's the lemonade that Mr. Eddington used to make. It's pound cake that Miss Daly, tall pound cake. I used to ask her for the recipe all the time. But she gave me the recipe, but you know how you pinch and and you make it so you don't always remember what to put inside of it? I still taste that. It's tall. It's everything I see in this building. It's these yellow windows. It's cross on the altar. It's the bumblebee that comes through the window and you watch it to see where it's going to land. It's Peggy's fingers on the piano going across the keys. It's the children trying to hold the hymn books and sing those songs that they don't know, making up words as they go along. Ask me something else, Denise.
Touch.
When I put my hands on that old Bible that's rested in the pulpit that so many other hands have touched, I follow in the long line of preachers here, or I have the communion set, the mobile one that other hands have held. It's the doorknob to the church when I walk in. It's passing the peace and hugging people. I get these hugs from the kids that just warm the cockles of my soul. Move on, Denise.
Movement.
Every now and then we'll sing something and people kind of sway. And I see the feet tapping against the floor when they're getting in rhythm with the music. It's watching people rise up and extend the peace to each other. And I get to see the last person walk out of the door. And there's something about, I watch people come in and then I watch people go out of the door, and I kind of stand there as the last person leaves and I watch that movement. This holy hill here. This sacred place. This open place. This godly place, this place. I'm downtown sometimes and I see this place. I'm driving away and I look in the mirror and I see this place. This place is here and inside of me too. Place. That's a rich word, isn't it? Place. It's grounding. It's raw. It's real. It holds me. Place. Next.
Feeling.
Lots of feelings, Denise. Sometimes I can't give voice to feelings. While I'm an outward person, I'm also a very inward person. County Cullen wrote a poem once and he talks about grief too sad for song sometimes, and sometimes what I feel inside, I often think if my heart could speak, you know. I wrestle with words a lot. My daddy had a 5th grade education, and I always said to myself, if I preach, I have to be so that my father could understand what I was saying. I couldn't use highfalutin words that he'd have to look underneath. I say, wonder what she said. And I decided if I didn't preach at a level that he could understand, he was my measuring stick. That I was a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And you asked me about feelings. I'm working on that, Denise. Getting kind of old on the road to be doing it, but I'm a ball of feelings sometimes. When and sometimes, you know, you feel, what does Gibran say about feelings? I'm working on that, Denise. That's enough. I'm tired.
Yeah, one more. When
I don't see you.
when I came in today, you were singing. Will you sing us from?
I ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. I ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking. I'm headed up the freedom way. There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. Sometimes I feel discouraged. I feel like my work's in vain. But then the Holy Spirit revives my soul again. There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. Cut.
We're working on a turn.
That's what I heard a minute ago, she's turning you down, so I figured I might as well talk credit for fair.
You know, I got all this debt, and you still want to loan me some money. That's just great.
Okay, you can go ahead.
All right, so I only owe the IRS about $60,000.
Oh, okay.
And
No
so I
problem.
need to borrow, at
You're
least,
on a payment plan?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Okay, cut 1 second.